This is Monocle on Design, a show where we discuss everything from architecture and craft to furniture and graphic design. I'm Nick Manise. On today's program, it's an industry events roundup. We recap Stockholm Design Week and cross to Mexico City for a collectible fair, Zona Maco Diseño. All that coming up on Monocle on Design. Hello and welcome to today's program. I'm joined down the line by Monocle's Gabriella Della Santi. Gab, you report all over the globe, and I guess your focus is on the Nordics. You're based in Copenhagen. You've just come back from Sweden for Stockholm Design Week, which is an event that began in 2002, but it's built around the Stockholm Furniture Fair, which started way back in 1951. So you've kind of got these two things happening. You've got the trade fair outside the city and then the actual events for Stockholm Design Week in the city. Tell us a little bit about what you saw on your beat.
I just felt there was a lot of excitement in the air despite the frigid temperatures. I mean, while it was sunny on Saturday, it just got back to the usual Scandi winter, gray sky and like 1 degree the whole day. The weather was pretty miserable after I arrived, but the energy among the designers was completely different. So I was happy to see that.
It's significant that you mentioned the weather there because I think this is maybe the challenge of this fair and this design week when you compare it to the likes of Copenhagen and its 3 days of design that takes place in June and even Salone del Mobile in Milan in April. They're much more appealing times to be in that city, but Stockholm's carved out this moment at the start of the year. Is it working to its benefit? Is there something nice about landing in Stockholm in the middle of winter?
I mean, that's actually what I kept thinking while I was on the plane. I was like, why is this held so early in the year? It is anchored to the fair, which is in an enclosed space. You would think that it's a little too cold so far north to be having a successful design week, which is centered around you basically walking around from studio to studio to check out these exhibitions. But I was quite quickly proven wrong because I met these two friends at this new hotel in Södermalm, which is this southern district of Stockholm. And actually, the first thing they told me was that this is held at the perfect time of the year because they think it's quite a dead, boring time of year. And that is actually just a good opportunity for designers and studios to engage with the public at a time when people maybe aren't that busy as they could be later in the year or in the summer. So I actually got proven wrong quite quickly. And again, there was quite a bit of excitement in the air.
I wonder if there's also some sort of benefit to the people that are buying and shopping, checking out the new releases of chairs and tables and sofas at this time of year. I feel like in summer, if you're Copenhagen at 3 days of design and it's beautiful blue skies and the weather's perfect, it's very easy to romanticize and maybe get a little bit carried away and think that the world's your oyster, this is going to be perfect for my home. But maybe when you're shopping in winter, you've got to be a little bit more realistic. You come into a place, you take off your coat, you've got to take a moment, you're halfway between sweaty and freezing. I think there's actually some value also in having an event that's maybe at less of a, for want of a better word, romantic time of year.
To be honest, you want to go indoors. So it is to the benefit of all these studios that you just want to go in, actually just want to cozy up inside. So maybe that's another plus, the fact that you just end up going into these places.
So this is really a way to, I guess, focus on the design. I mean, and let's talk a little bit about what you saw. You went and visited Dry Studios, which is located in Odenplan, a neighbourhood of Stockholm. Tell us a little bit about your meeting with its co-founder.
So I actually visited the studio for the first time in May last year. I was just in Stockholm on kind of on a weekend trip. And I met the founder, Jenny. They actually had this bigger space. It was 2 rooms, both facing the street, stunning space, packed with their creations. You got everything from paintings to smaller furniture objects to ceramic sculptures. You get really this impression of a very creative studio. I went this time around and I'd actually reduced the space by half. And so my first question was like, oh, are you like narrowing down your focus? Is that what you're doing? And she was actually like, no, we're not narrowing down anything, because actually what they want to show is the extent to which they can be creative. So it was a way for them to have one room and show everything that they can do and can provide their clients. They are a creative studio founded in 2012. They provide interior projects, furniture design. Stockholm Design Week for them was a way to welcome their clients in and show the extent of their work. They had these projects lying on this central table in the middle of the room, showcasing what they have been working on.
It sounds incredible. They've kind of given themselves a limitation, which is always good, and I guess it pushes that creativity. So let's hear a little bit about that work and that creativity from Jenny Castel Tavasoli, co-founder of Dry Studios.
We started as a design agency, actually, and mainly worked within fashion and lifestyle. And we also worked a lot with interior brands and styling and things like that. And so from that angle, we really experience life and the lifestyle. We started also to design furniture 10 years ago. So it's small scale and it's made to order and with really fine craftsmanship. Almost every item that we do are massive wood and some detail with metal and so on, yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about your approach to design and how you would define your design language?
The design language that you're seeing in this studio we built it from a darker perspective or a lighter perspective, and now this room is quite dark and it's like a bluish black tone on the walls, and that goes very well with the wood. I think it's different wood types. Also, don't afraid to mix wood types. We have the desk here with the curly birch. And we also have walnut, a lot of oak. Glass cabinet is oak, but it's dark walnut colored. Yeah, there's also some details of metal, of course, and leather. I think the material mix is what defines us, actually.
And can you tell me a bit from your perspective what your perception is of Stockholm Design Week?
I think it's a really good week where a lot of people coming out from other countries, and that's really good for Stockholm. I think that so many are interested in the design week, and not only visiting bigger brands but also the smaller studios and smaller architect studios, but also I think is going more towards also visiting restaurants and galleries and wine bars. So more about the whole Stockholm environment.
That was Jenny Castel Tavasoli, co-founder of Dry Studios. Gab, what I love there, she finished with a point that is very similar to what you were talking about. It's a cultural moment. It's about experiencing the city. And I think it's also about experiencing design in real kind of lived-in context. Was that your impression of visiting Dry Studios?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and that is a part of their offering to their clients, right? Because they work on interiors, because they do furniture, because they do art and ceramics. It was a way for them to welcome people into their world.
I think I also love the confidence they have to kind of mix and match things and not be afraid to have things that clash, because in a way it sounds like that clash is also complementary. Does that make sense? Is that how that came together visually in the room?
Yeah, and it was just very unique. I think I haven't seen anything like that in Stockholm. I think it works in terms of wanting to showcase what you can do and why clients should go to them. I just think their studio really stands out.
Absolutely, and certainly reason to, as you did earlier, visit beyond Stockholm Design Week. Tell us where we're heading next.
From Odenplan, I took the tunnelbana to Södermalm, which is personally one of my favorite areas of the city. It's buzzing, youthful, definitely worth a visit. You have to go if you go to Stockholm. Packed with restaurants, bars, cafes, galleries. You'll find a lot in that area of the city. And I went to visit Note, one of the more established within the smaller studios of the city. They've been around since 2008, and the founder is an Italian called Cristiano. And this year they have been presenting their first ever architectural project. So they are a multidisciplinary studio focused on everything from product to graphic design. And they have a very international team. He was telling me how they pride themselves on having a very diverse team and working together on projects, so that even if they're working on for example, design of a product, they will get the opinion of the graphic designer and so on. In presenting their first architectural project, they retransformed the studio. And so I went to visit their studio in Södermalm, and I met Cristiano there.
Our studio here in Stockholm is an old bank that we bought 7 years ago. we are continuing developing the space. And our idea is to create a space that is like welcoming for people working here. We want to create a kind of familiar feeling. At the same time, we want to mix it with this energy that you get when you enter like a design studio with the prototype, with the test. And so it's a mix of a home and a studio. That's the feeling. So now we have just repaint almost everything, and we are preparing different station where we present the project that we have done this year and for Stockholm Design Week.
And what are your thoughts on the importance of an event like Stockholm Design Week?
I think it's important to have a design week because, let's say, 11 months and 3 weeks a year, we are just focusing on our own stuff. Of course, we're going to other fairs, but the design week is a kind of, okay, now we open up to public. Design, it became something more cultural, not just the job we are doing. The design week as an institution is so important because we try to involve the city. I would like that it's even more in the future to involve people that maybe they are not so into design. For me, as an Italian, moved to Sweden, I remember in the 80s when I grew up in Italy, close to Milano, you have the feeling that design was everywhere. And even if I was not into that, I get a kind of a relation with that. And that, I think, is something that the Design Week can really do, to put us close, or a company we work with, close to the people that in the end are going to use what we are doing. Space or objects, books. And I hope that as the industry, we should not close into ourselves, but we should open up more.
That was Cristiano Pigazzini, co-founder of Note Studio. A few things there that I really, really loved, Gab. One, I feel like despite him being Italian, they're continuing this amazing Nordic trend of being a design studio that does everything, the old from the spoon to the city, product to graphic design to architecture. I think that's really, really wonderful. But I do like that last point about being in touch with the people that you're doing work for. And I'm curious, have you come across any other examples of where people find ways to maintain dialogues with the general public, with people that they're going to be working with?
One of the main takeaways for me from visiting Stockholm Design Week this year was actually this willingness of the designers to transform this into a bigger cultural moment for the city. So going beyond, you would say, just the fair, but instead becoming a moment where everybody is involved in the city. It becomes kind of an annual appointment for everyone beyond even the design industry. The event is still rather niche. Not many people outside the design industry in Stockholm will know about it. I have to say it's the same here in Copenhagen, but it has been changing in recent years. So I would say the past 2, 3, 4 years maybe. I have friends who work also outside the industry, and they are starting to become more and more engaged with 3 days of design, just because it's becoming a citywide event that is really involving everyone. I'm not sure Stockholm Design Week is there yet, of course. Designers are wishing for something like that, for it to become this moment where the city comes together and where the city engages with design for this week-long event.
Yeah, I think we need more of them across the globe, which is maybe a nice time to take a pause from Stockholm Design Week and move over to a collectible design fair in North America. The 21st edition of Zona Maco, the biggest arts fair in Latin America, is still underway, but with it comes a host of, satellite events, and one of them is Zona Maco Diseño, or Zona Maco Design, which wrapped up over the weekend. Now, this satellite event focuses on high-end contemporary pieces, from furniture to jewellery and textiles and decorative objects. To tell both you, Gab, and myself a little bit more, and our listeners, audio producer Verity DeCala went along and sent us this report.
In the beautiful residential neighbourhood of Polanco, I met with the artistic director of design at Zona Maco, Cecilia León de la Barra. We met in Studio Bandido, one of the many open design galleries exhibiting at this year's fair, and surrounded by their exquisite lighting, she began by telling me about her curation for this 14th edition of Zona Maco Design.
Well, it's amazing because Zona Maco Design, as an independent fair now, but within Zona Maco Fair, we're showcasing the final product, but some galleries or designers, they also show the process. Here in Bandido, they're showing how they make the lamps, he's showing the final project, but also he tells the story of how it's done or who he's collaborating with. No? So in Baroni Vicario, he's working with Carsten Lemme. He's a German designer that he's been living in Mexico a while now. He's been working with color. He's presenting a collection called Can, and it's with Mayan blue, no? So it's this resin, because Baroni Vicario always works with resin, no? And then they're showing this Mayan blue can collection. We'll see the story, maybe, no? So that's also amazing.
Would you say design in Mexico, especially contemporary design, has garnered more international attention in recent years?
Yes. 25 years ago, the design scene was just like a tiny seed, and then design studios and little things started to happen. So I would say now it's amazing. We have so many proposals, so many good designers, and such good quality that, I would say it's been growing so much. Living in Mexico and growing up in Mexico, we had this culture that the made in Mexico was not well made, no? That made in Mexico was cheap or was badly done or was not good quality. I remember when we had this first collection, it was 2001, it was years ago, and people came to the shop. We were in Condesa when Condesa was starting, nothing like it's now, and people came and it said, oh, where are they made? Where are they from? No? Italy? And we were like, no, Mexico. This is, no, in the workshop in 30 minutes from here, no? And they were, okay, no? They didn't believe that made in Mexico was well done, that we were able to make all these things. Because if something was maybe handmade, it didn't look with a machine-made quality, you would say. And now, the handmade has an amazing quality, no? And has another value, the handmade, no? Because it's like this amazing craft. Zona Maco is an international fair, and now people are coming and seeing what's happening here in Mexico, no? And excited to see what's happening in the design scene.
One of the exhibits at Zona Maco, displaying the value of the process of traditional handcrafted techniques while creating a thoroughly modern aesthetic, is Studio Bandido. I caught up with them at their booth at the opening of Zona Maco.
My name is Joel Rojas. I'm the creative director of Bandido. And Bandido is a lighting company that we specialize in decorative lighting. We design and manufacture in Puebla, Mexico. Normally we work with different materials, and as a studio we're always exploring with the materials, right? So here in Mexico we also have a lot of crafts that, working with stone. We're located in Puebla, and near Puebla there is a place called Tecali de Herrera, which means in Nahuatl, house of stone. And what they do there is they work with marble only. So they specialize in working with marble, onyx, and all this material. The person who knows how to work with the materials are the artisans, right? So what we do is approach, see about the process they're making, the capabilities of the material, the properties as well. And with that, we take that information and we start designing. Yeah, we found that very romantic, because here in Mexico we have a lot of materials, a lot of possibilities as well with all these crafts. One part of what we do is that not every piece is going to be exactly the same. Why? Because we work with natural materials, so they present different properties and characteristics. So in marble or onyx, the veins of the marble are not similar on all the pieces, so they change. And I think it's special because as a buyer, when you buy one of our pieces, you have a unique collection, right? A unique lighting object. Happy accidents, I think, no? So I think it's special, like working with handmade, because it also represents the ability of the artisan.
Just around the corner from Bandido Studio is the Emergente section of Zona Maco Design, which displayed an eclectic range of objects by young designers from across Mexico. One of this year's exhibitors caught my eye with her display of a beautiful Moroccan rug.
My name is Cecilia Portillo. I'm part of Unrug. That is a rug design atelier that integrates research creation, human-centered design, and ontological design principles into our creative process. Today we're presenting a piece called Alfombra sin título, which is referring to Donald Judd's untitled piece, but also inspired by the Satellite Towers of Barragán. The piece actually starts with the question, how can we convert a Moroccan rug into a Mexican one? And through deconstructing its elements and adapting them and translating them to the Mexican context, we create the piece that you're seeing here today.
Tell me a little bit about Emergente and why it's important to you to be here.
Yeah, Emergente is a beautiful initiative. It started it's coordinated rather by Jorge Diego Etienne, Cecilia León de la Barra, and Joel Escalona. And the three of them put together this space. Jorge Diego, I took a course with him, and he was talking about how before in Europe there was always these spaces in the different biennales where they would have emerging designers, and where many of the most important designers today were actually there before. And he was like, that's dying. And so it's very important to him to have this space here in Mexico City. And actually, a lot of designers that have started here actually are now even having big booths around the area. So it's actually a platform for us to start, and I know to continue growing afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like there are other opportunities in Mexico City for young designers to flourish at the moment?
I think there definitely is. Mexico City is flourishing not just with design, but just restaurants and design houses and just all of the different projects. It's a very accessible place. I mean, I'll tell you, most of my house, I designed it myself. Like all of my furniture, you can work with a carpintero, you can work with somebody to make your glasses, somebody to paint something. Like it's so accessible for you to create objects actually, and to even establish a little company or a little restaurant or a little showroom or something. And so it's actually blooming with emerging designers. It's definitely a place where emerging designers should come to create and co-create, really.
Can you tell me a bit more about the research behind this piece and the people that were involved in making it?
It's been beautiful because we've been able to collaborate with Moroccan women, and we've traveled many times to Morocco to meet different cooperatives. Each one of them has their different sort of weaving technique, washing technique, and it was really through this translation process that I was mentioning before that we started saying, okay, well actually we like how the people in the north do this, and we like how the people in the south do, for example, the coloring of the wool, and we started combining those ideas into creating this actual piece. The actual research is actually more from thinking of ontological design. So, you design a piece, but then do we think, how does this piece design us in return? It's been interesting at my house. I placed a rug at my house, and it's designing humans or the people who enter my space to take off their shoes or to put the baby on the rug. My brother just had a baby. Or do behaviors that they wouldn't have done before. So the research is coming from that lens, really. I want people to be aware of their feet and aware of their senses. And, I always like to think of the space above my head. But then what about the space below your feet, And it's this, just bringing you into presence is really what I want to bring with this piece.
This was really just a tiny morsel of what Zona Maco Design had on offer, as open studios and design galleries stretched across the whole city. It's an event that has become a staple in the global calendar, and with more and more designers, galleries and collectors flocking to Mexico's capital, I suspect it will only get bigger and better next year. For Monocle in Mexico City, I'm Verity de Carla.
We're back, and I'm still joined by Gabriella Delasanti down the line with some more highlights from Stockholm Design Week. Gab, we're going to finish up with one more interview from your time in the Swedish capital. Last up, and by no means least, you spoke with the team behind furniture and design company Contem. Tell us a little bit more about this brand.
They are relatively new, and they work with repurposed materials. Their idea is to present a more elevated offering and challenge people's perception of what furniture from repurposed wood, in this case, is. They are showcasing a selection of pieces that they have designed in collaboration with a Swedish-Scottish designer called Nick Ross in this really beautiful gallery space in Östermalm.
Contem really stood out to me for two reasons. They're using recycled materials, which is incredibly important, but they're doing it in a way that feels chic and elevated and sophisticated. I think so often it can be easy to lean into this more shabby chic look and feel when we're talking about recycling and repurposing and really flagging that, hey, I'm doing something with a material in a different way that it was intended to be used. And I feel like maybe we're starting to evolve out of that look and that feel. And Contem is showing a new way of doing it. Let's hear from co-founders Christian Lind and Jack Delasanta.
We're today at the public service gallery on Storgatan 1 in central Stockholm. And it's a beautiful gallery that opened just a couple of years ago. It belongs to Nordiska Galleriet, and we're super happy to be here. And to us, this was on our list of potential places or venues to be at. This is the first one. We're showcasing a collection of 7 objects that Nick Ross, the designer, has put together, and they're all from this avenue of Kungsat in this island, 20-minute boat ride from where we are now.
And what was the process of working with repurposed wood in the collection you're presenting here in Stockholm?
So we got a call from an arborist in April last year that said that they were taking down huge branches from these over 300 years old trees and asked if you were interested. So we took a boat ride out in May to have a look, and we brought Nick Ross with us because we thought he could be the perfect collaborator on this project. Yeah, at first sight we understood that this was the place and we need to do something because the story was so good. The trees would still be there when we produced the furniture, and it's not often you find this kind of old trees, and especially not branches this big. So after discussing this together with the arborist on the island, he said he could help us to bring them over to the mainland, and we got them in August last year. Since then they've been drying and now also made into objects by a local carpenter.
In terms of this year's collection, we are working as we have previously done with materials that are somehow guiding the design, and in our collaboration with Nick Ross, who we greatly admire, we have somehow, I think, approached it in a similar way. The branches that we are working with are guiding the design of the pieces. It's really interesting to see another designer somehow interpret the way that we are working with, and this is our first time really trying that out. So it has been really inspiring to work with Nick.
That sounded like they were talking to me, Gab, and I believe I am inspiring to work with. That was your conversation with Jack Della Santa, and before that, Christian Lind of Contem Studio. I've got to ask quickly, was there a piece of their furniture that you'd want to have in your own home?
Yeah, I think their stool. I think it's just the simplicity of the construction of the furniture. It has this very geometric, straightforward design, which personally appeals to me and I think will look good today and in 50 years, especially once it's crafted well. That's even better.
I think there is also something to be said about wanting to have furniture and pieces in your home that have an amazing story behind them. And I tell you what, to have something made from a branch that's 300 years old from an island outside of Stockholm, I think is absolutely wonderful, and certainly a story you could happily regale your friends with time and time again. Some closing thoughts or remarks. What can maybe other design fairs or events learn from what you've seen this week? What are some of the takeaways for people elsewhere in the world?
One of the main takeaways is that these design weeks are really a space for younger, emerging, smaller studios to really show their creativity. They don't have to be able to afford the big fairs. If you see a lot of these spaces, they're simple. One room scattered with these beautiful pieces of furniture. They invite people over for a coffee in the day, a glass of wine in the evening, and really welcome people into their world. This is something that, in general, the Scandinavian design industry tends to do pretty well, to give space to these younger and more emerging designers.
And maybe there's a lesson there for designers elsewhere too. So often we're trying to think globally, but really often the most beautiful things are things that are really local and have a really strong place-based narrative. Gabriella Della Santi, amazing coverage from Stockholm Design Week for us. Thank you very much for joining us on Monocle on Design.
Thank you, Nick.
And that's all for today's show. For more design stories, listen to our 5-minute midweek bonus show, Monocle on Design Extra, which airs on Thursdays. And if you enjoy print, then do pick up a copy of Monocle magazine as well. It's on all good newsstands now. Today's episode was produced and edited by Maylee Evans. I'm Nick Manise, and you can reach me on nm@monocle.com. Thanks for listening.